Welcome to Unlocked, an NAMFS Podcast, Episode 7, The Communication Equation.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the next series of our NAMFS Podcast, Unlocked. I have a great group of guests here joining us today. But before we get going on our topics, let's start with some brief introductions so our audience knows who we're talking to. I'll start first. Kelly Chambers, President and COO of G7 Service Group. We're a national property preservation and inspection company.
Jason Radzaminski, Northern Ohio Field Services. We are an inspection-only company, and we service currently 8 states across the country, mainly in the Midwest.
My name is Lenny Iodice. I'm the Director of Operations for Innovative Field Services. We are an inspections and preservation company, active in 12 states, mostly on the northern seaboard.
And I'm Eric Miller, Executive Director. We're excited to start the Communication Podcast.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining me today. There's a lot of parties in our industry that we interact with daily, right? Banks, mortgage companies, contractors in the field, national service providers like G7 Service Group, regional service providers like Jason here, right? All the way down to local boots on the ground, the guy actually cutting the grass or performing the inspection at a property. A lot of parties. When we have this many participants, communication is going to be a challenge. So we're going to talk today about how to ensure clear, consistent communication across all these parties, knowing that there's so many handoffs. So let's start with Jason. What breakdown happens most often between your client and your office or your inspectors in the field, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, Kelly, the toughest challenge is you talk about with the boots on the ground, right? All of us are usually working from an office at a computer screen. We're not out in the field like the boots on the ground are. So our clients are looking for answers between, 8 and 5. That's their day, right? For most of us, we know that goes longer, but the poor boots on the ground, they're out in the field, they're trying to get the work done, and everybody wants an update. And it's like, well, hold on, I'm trying as best as I can, but you have somebody in the field driving their car, taking pictures, trying to get everything done, and then we're over there hounding them saying, hey, well, I need this ECD. The client's gonna, they're so mad at us. We need to get it over. And it's so hard to get that. We try to send out at least a weekly communication to our network, usually on the weekend, so that they can tell us where they're going to be throughout the week, so that we at least have an idea that we can update our clients unless we really need to reach out to them. I think that's the toughest challenge is people, our national clients, a lot of those people, they don't know what it's like to run a boots on the ground business and have to plan and be out in the field 5, 6, 7 days a week. They're used to being behind the computer. So sometimes educating them on what exactly is going on and getting them to be just patient enough to get a response is the biggest challenge and the toughest to communicate to everyone.
Lenny, I'm sure you've seen communication breakdowns too as a contractor out there. What's one and what are ways to prevent those breakdowns?
I think some of the breakdowns that we're seeing most of the time is like when it comes to on-site approval processes. We'll be going to properties, we're trying to show the full story of the property, we'll communicate certain emergency issues to the clients, and sometimes we're waiting to hear back on those answers. Sometimes, pump outs need to be done right away so the water doesn't keep rising or freezing happens. The biggest thing is, as Jason did say, getting the boots on the ground to have the proper information communicated to us so we can send it over to the clients to have every issue resolved that doesn't lead to a further issue or further delays down the road. That's like our biggest challenge that we're facing right now. And also, keeping the vendors safe in the properties too, knowing the property's histories, making sure that we have enough notes in the systems to let the clients know, hey, we were here about a month ago, there was somebody inside. So we don't go through the same, act of possibly not completing something that the client wants done right away. So there's breakdowns happen. It's a part of the business, but if we're communicating as fast as we can with the most accurate information, with the best pictures and understanding the story, that does help to break down, troubleshooting quite a bit. And, it's not just one vendor that we're dealing with. We have a network of like about 30 vendors in, different states. So, which deals with different client coordinators. Not everybody you're going to is going to be the same person. So they're not sure of like the situation at a property all the time. So we have to just be clear in our focus and what our plan is to remediate the issues, because if something, gets delayed and the vendor is now off to another property, he then has to go back to fix the issue. So we are trying our best to solve the on-site approval process as fast as possible. And we're seeing a breakdown with that sometimes because obviously they don't get approvals right away. But as long as we're giving them the information, they know what's coming.
Great. Eric, as the executive director of NAMFS, I imagine that there's lots of opportunities for clear communication with your members, hundreds and hundreds of members, as well as with continuing communication throughout the industry. What breaks are you seeing, and how do you work to prevent those breaks in communication?
I would say that what these guys have explained in their daily tasks is really kind of the most difficult thing in terms of getting information out. We have ways that we talk about communication in our NAMFS Academy, where we talk about the importance of clear communication, understanding what is needed from your clients, all the way kind of through the chain. But then from a NAMFS perspective, we really kind of try and take a look at what are the appropriate ways to connect with our membership and the industry at large. So things like that we're trying now here with the new podcast are really exciting. A smaller dose, where we're having day-to-day interactions, kind of a weekly interaction. We also do a lot of social media presentations, work on some things along those lines through our normal social media channels, and then newsletters. The challenge is, again, everybody's just inundated with so much information, getting that right information out and then making sure that everyone hears it at a high enough level, because everyone's business practices are a little bit different. But that's kind of what NAMFS is trying to do, is really just educate the industry.
Great. From a national perspective, proactive communication is probably the most important thing to my clients. We want to beat them to the punch. We don't want the client calling us and asking us what the status is on a particular item. We want to send that update before they ever make the phone call. What are some examples, start with Lenny, of a proactive communication that turned into a big win for you?
So we were dealing with the property. It was upstate New York. We've had the property for a couple of years. We documented every situation of the property, had client calls about the property. We're sending constant communications about it. And then, as it happens through the industry, the property was then taken out of our portfolio for a bit of time. So obviously we had not been there for a little bit of time. But through our years of communication, when the property came back to us, we had a client call about certain issues that the property was facing, because we were told that, this happened during your time having the property in your portfolio, which happened to not be the case. It happened during the lapse, but through our communications previously, having client calls with them, showing them the photos of the property, we then came to the issues of this had nothing to do with our company. This was during the lapse phase. And the win of it came when we started gaining approvals again. So basically, our standpoint and what we try to put out there to everyone is, if you're documenting the situations every time you go and you're having constant communications with the clients, there should never be an issue about a question that's going to come. Like you brought up a good point, Kelly, having an answer for them before they even ask, that's honestly one of our biggest goals. And keeping that going with every property is how you win.
Great. Jason, do you have an example where proactive communication resulted in a big win for you?
Lenny hit the nail on the head with everything. That's a tough act to follow there, but he's right. That communication and that piece of documenting everything all the way through. Insurance is a big topic, right, in this industry, and sometimes people, are like, oh, what do I need it for? I don't ever use it. Well, sure enough, having had that and then good, clear documentation on our inspections, we've been served 2 or 3 different times with with papers to say, hey, we need your information on this. This house burned down, and here's what's going on. And thankfully, because like Lenny said, with the right pictures, a good inspector who detailed absolutely everything to what the client wanted, as soon as they asked us for that information or that statement from the inspector, they were able to give it to them clear as day. Nobody was named in the lawsuit. Nothing happened because we had the information, and they did their job the right way, filling out the forms properly, making sure that all the photos that the client asked for were there, so that when the timeline that the house next door was trying to set up for the situation, we had all the information for everybody. And by working with the client and being proactive on it, when they asked us, we were able to go right to that inspector. They had an answer immediately, and we were able to go right back to the client and say, hey, here's the scenario. And everything was good. So Lenny's right. You have to tell that story with your pictures. You're the eyes and the ears for everybody out there when you're the boots on the ground, and you have to give them what you see. And that's why it's so important to take all your pictures. We tell our people, hey, the client might only want 9. Do me a favor, take 15 or take 20 while you're there. You're going to get home and realize you either missed one, or you need a different angle, or the form's going to fill out and you're going to label it and you're going to go, oh, I need this one and I don't have, so take extra. It can't hurt. You can always delete them. You don't have to label them all, but make sure you have everything they have. So, we always try to communicate that with our network of, hey, you're the eyes and the ears. You tell the story. And when they look at that order from a QC standpoint, or there's an issue with a property, that's what they're going back to. So, always keep that in mind. Sometimes this stuff is a year later too. It's not a week later. It's a year later or a year and a half later.
Jason, you're so right. And you know what? Taking that extra 5 to 10 to 15 minutes to just go through everything again, one more time, has saved us countless times. And you're right. It's not just something that's going to pop up, next week. This could be 2 years down the road, a year down the road. That's why documentation and client emailing and calling and putting everybody in the chain is the best way to go about it.
It's good feedback for our membership. Eric, do you have examples of where data helped with proactive communication from the NAMFS organization?
Yeah, I think from a NAMFS perspective, going back to that academy, we do have information in there. Jason brought up the comment about the photos and things along those lines. Lots of times, particular attention is not paid to that end of the spectrum. It's just kind of like, hey, let me take some pictures. Within the academy, we specifically state, maximize that photo, maximize the data that you're trying to tell in that particular story, instead of taking, 16 close-up shots of particular damages or something along those lines. Can you take a wider shot highlighting those damages, either with some type of post-it note or something along those lines, so that, again, we're inundated with data. And again, if I can't get a perspective as to how it looks, that's a challenge. So that's probably a really good example of kind of using the data that we have or the information that we have to make sure that our network, our members, are well informed and making the correct decisions as it relates to communications.
Good. What do you guys think is like an acceptable response time to an inquiry via email or phone call? Are you responding in 7 minutes, 7 days, a month? Jason.
Well, Kelly, it's funny that you say that though, but the reality is I think it's different for everybody in this industry, right? So if you're reaching out to me and you have an issue, man, my team better be right on it. They better be spot on. We need to, customer service is key in this industry. It's just key. You have to give your clients what they're looking for. Now, if you're the boots on the ground, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard for these people. They're out in the field, they're driving, they've got a phone, they're trying to get the inspections done. They're trying not to get pulled over and get a ticket for using their phone while they're driving. All those factors come in, and Eric said it as well. Everybody's inundated with newsletters and emails and all of that. And, if you're an inspector just on your own, that's a tough avenue to run I'll be honest with you, we find out from our inspector network, phone calls, text messages are probably the fastest way to get a hold of someone versus sending an email to the boots on the ground. That person, and Lenny, I bet your contractors are probably the same way on the prop pres side. They're
100%.
working. Like
100%.
they don't have time to answer an
No.
email.
You know what? You brought up a great point about the texting. That has become a huge thing with us. And, to get back to your question, Kelly, giving an answer and to piggyback off Jason, if you're reaching out to me about something, why would I make you wait? I'm going to give you that answer as fast as I possibly can and with the most accurate date as I possibly can. Because where frustration does come in is, we give you a day and then a week later that it hasn't been done. And I understand where that frustration comes from, but I also understand the vendor's frustration too, because we're asking them to do 30 different things in one day. So to piggyback off of both of you, I would like to try to get that answer as fast as possible, but I want the most accurate answer as well. And our office staff is really good at giving the answers back to when the clients need it, and also reaching out to the client saying, hey, can we discuss this property? Because this situation is going to arise when we go here based off of our previous notes of the property, based off of our previous photos of the property. So it really all depends. But with certain orders, obviously, if a securing you need to have an update immediately. That's the most important type of situation. That's the key to the whole thing. But obviously, you're going to reach orders where a roof could be involved with a permit situation. Now you're dealing with building officials. So there's certain type of situations, but I would say, to piggyback off of Jason, I'm going to give you that answer as fast as I possibly can.
It's great.
Yeah.
As the
Hey, Kelly.
middleman, often between yourselves and the bank or mortgage company that needs the information, I mean, Lenny, you hit it on the head. I'd rather have an accurate answer than a fast answer. So I do encourage people to say, I don't know. And we need time to get the right information. So accuracy is more important than fast responses in many cases. I'm not going to say all, but probably most. So
Yeah.
that's good.
I would
Yeah,
just,
Kelly, you're right. Eric, sorry to cut you off there real quick, but both you and Lenny are correct. And so for anybody that's listening to this podcast that is performing inspections or prop pres, that's the truth right there. You have to keep your word. So if you tell me that you're going on this day to do that inspection, and I tell the client that, and then you don't hold true to that, I'm the guy that looks, my team, our group, we look bad to
100%.
Kelly or to another client. Like, that's where you all get frustrated with us. And then there's this bickering that happens between the inspector and the client, and us regionals are left in the middle to deal with it.
You're so right. You're so right. It's frustrating.
Yeah. So my 2 cents word of advice to the boots on the ground that are doing this: your word is golden. So if you give your word, that's what I'm going off of. My team is going off of it. You have to keep it. So the old adage, under promise and over deliver, but don't over promise and then under deliver. It leaves everybody in a bad spot.
Those are excellent closing comments. Hey, Eric, do you have anything to add before we conclude?
yeah, I just would say that, again, kind of building upon that, the reality is an acknowledgement that you've received is the key. An acknowledgement that you've received some type of request is a key. That response should come fairly quickly, with an understanding where you do set the deadlines, you do set the timeframes for a response. And I agree 100% with you, Kelly. What is more important is accurate than just quickly. So again, acknowledge the request as best you can, realizing that some areas that's not going to always be in your best interest from a safety perspective. But then ultimately, when you do respond, say, I anticipate having this response back to you at this time, setting a stage, because as you're well aware, Kelly, in the chain, as you go up, if you just say, okay, there is always going to be an expectation for when will I have an answer. And in some instances, it's very critical. In lots of instances, I think it's a nice to have. Text is great, all those kinds of things. We like instant response. But again, we have to take into consideration what's going on.
That's great. Thank you guys so much for offering your in the field opinions and perspectives on timely communication. Such a critical part of everything that we do every day. I hope you guys join us for the next podcast.
Thank you for watching and/or listening. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to next Wednesday, when we unlock our next episode.